Welcome back to Fencing Family. Today, we're going to try something a little different. We're diving deep into the mental side of fencing. And we've got some really interesting sources for this one. Interviews with Olympic fencers, insights from sports psychologists who work with, these top athletes, and even some stories from fencing parents. It's all about how mental preparation can really, I think, maybe change the game for people at all levels of fencing.
Yeah, going through all this material, it is amazing how much emphasis elite fencers put on the mental side of things. They talk about it almost like a physical game of chess, where strategic thinking and making decisions really fast is just as important as how good you are physically.
That's a great point. I
Yeah.
mean, we always hear about the importance of footwork and blade work,
Yeah.
obviously. But it seems like the mental game is kind of this secret weapon that can really separate the good from the great.
Oh, absolutely. One of the Olympic fencers we read about even talked about this kind of in the moment thinking as like toggling between two different mindsets. So off the strip, they're analyzing, strategizing, almost like a chess grandmaster, plotting their next move. But then once the bout begins, it all switches to instinct, right? Honed reflexes and this almost zen-like connection to their body.
Wow, yeah, it's like switching from a supercomputer to a highly trained warrior,
Yeah.
just like that. So how do you even begin to train for that kind of mental agility?
Well, that's where mental training comes in. These athletes use techniques like visualization, practicing under pressure, and of course, working with sports psychologists to help them, really sharpen their focus and hone those instincts. It's about bridging the gap between deliberate strategy and that intuitive action.
Sounds intense.
Mm.
One of the sports psychologists we read about really emphasized the critical role of focus and concentration, right, for making those split-second decisions.
Hmm.
And reacting to your opponent's moves. I mean, they even said that a momentary lapse in focus could be the difference between, winning and losing.
Absolutely. And the pressure to maintain that kind of focus, especially in a high stakes tournament, I mean.
Mm.
Think about the mental fortitude it takes to stand on that strip, knowing that every single move you make is being watched and scrutinized by coaches, judges, the audience. It's no wonder fencers talk about developing mental toughness right alongside their physical skills.
Yeah, and it's not just about one bout either, right? It's about carrying that mental resilience through an entire tournament, dealing with maybe some unexpected setbacks, and staying motivated even when you must be exhausted.
Exactly, and we learned about some specific techniques that fencers use to try to manage that pressure. Things like pre-competition routines, visualization exercises, even incorporating meditation into their training. It helps them create this sense of calm and focus, even amidst all the chaos of competition.
That makes a lot of sense. This whole idea of mental resilience really resonated with me. We read this amazing story about a former world champion who suffered a serious knee injury that almost ended her fencing career completely. She talked about facing doubt, fear, even battling depression during her recovery.
Yeah, her story is a powerful testament to how important mental resilience is, especially in a sport like fencing where injuries are, unfortunately they're a reality. She had to completely redefine her relationship with the sport, finding ways to cope with the psychological impact of that injury. And she actually ended up discovering a newfound strength within herself.
It's incredible how she was able to overcome such a daunting obstacle and eventually even found a new passion for coaching. It really makes you realize that these mental skills that we're talking about, this focus, resilience, adaptability, they aren't just limited to the fencing strip, are they? They're valuable tools for navigating challenges in really any aspect of life.
100%. I mean, think about the pressures we face in our daily lives, right? Deadlines, tough conversations, unexpected obstacles. The mental fortitude that fencers cultivate can benefit anyone in facing those challenges with more confidence and composure.
Yeah, while we're on this topic of resilience and dealing with pressure, I can't help but think about the unique challenges faced by fencing parents. The sources we went through really painted a vivid picture of how emotionally invested they can become in their child's fencing journey.
It's true. Parents often get really swept up in the intensity of the sport, and sometimes their emotions can unintentionally add to the pressure their child is already facing. We even read about a shortage of referees in some regions due to the, well, let's just say, passionate behavior of parents and spectators.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that everyone involved in youth sports, parents, coaches, spectators, we all has a responsibility to create a positive and supportive environment. Imagine the weight on a young fencer's shoulders when they're dealing with their own nerves, and then you add the expectations and sometimes overzealous reactions from their parents. That's a lot to handle.
It really is. That's why it's so crucial for parents to be mindful of their role. Their primary focus should be on their child's overall well-being and development, not just on winning or losing. Nurturing a love for the sport, fostering resilience, and instilling sportsmanship. Those are the values that will truly benefit young athletes in the long run.
Absolutely. It's a great reminder for all of us, whether we're athletes, parents, or just fans of the sport, that there's so much more to sports than just the final score. It's about the lessons we learn, the challenges we overcome, and the character we build along the way.
Well said. And speaking of challenges, one topic that really stood out to me was the issue of hazing in sports. We often hear about it in the context of colleges and fraternities, but it can happen at any level, even in youth sports, which is concerning.
It's disturbing, but unfortunately not all that surprising. Hazing often kind of masquerades as team building, but the consequences can be severe, both physically and emotionally. It can damage team dynamics, hurt relationships, and even turn people away from sports altogether.
Yeah, the key is recognizing the difference between healthy team building activities and harmful hazing rituals. An open and honest communication between coaches, athletes, and parents is essential to cultivating a culture where hazing is not tolerated.
And it's just as important to empower young athletes to speak up. If they witness or experience hazing, they need to know it's never okay, and that they have the right to feel safe and respected within their sport.
Absolutely. And we, as adults, have a responsibility to take those reports seriously and address the issues swiftly and effectively. We all have a role to play in creating a safe and positive environment for young athletes.
It's interesting how all these threads we've been discussing, the mental game, the role of parents, the issue of hazing, they all point to this broader culture surrounding a sport. It's not just about physical prowess. It's about the values, the attitudes, and the behaviors that shape the experience for everyone involved.
That's a great observation. The culture of a sport can either nurture or hinder an athlete's development, both physically and mentally. And ultimately, it's up to all of us, athletes, coaches, parents, and fans, to create a culture that prioritizes sportsmanship, respect, and a genuine love for the game.
Beautifully put. And speaking of that love for the game, I want to circle back to this concept of being in the zone. We touched upon it earlier. One fencer described it as this feeling of effortless flow, of being completely absorbed in the moment. It almost sounds like a meditative state.
It is fascinating how this concept of flow transcends athletics. It can apply to any activity where we're fully engaged and challenged, whether it's playing music, writing, or even having a really engaging conversation. It's that state of effortless concentration where time seems to melt away and we're just completely immersed in the experience.
Yeah, that's such a powerful image. It makes you wonder how we can cultivate that sense of flow in our own lives. What are those ingredients that allow us to tap into that state of effortless focus and enjoyment?
That's a great question, and one we can definitely delve into further. But first, I think let's take a closer look at the role of visualization and mental rehearsal in fencing. We know these techniques are used by elite athletes across various sports, but how do they work? And how can fencers specifically benefit from them?
I'm all ears. Let's step into that mind gym and see what mental tools we can add to our arsenal.
Visualization is, well, it's like creating a mental blueprint for success. It's incredibly powerful, and fencers use it to rehearse specific actions, anticipate their opponent's moves, even envision themselves, winning the bout.
So it's more than just picturing yourself on the podium with a medal. You're saying it's about mentally practicing techniques and strategies.
Exactly. The more vividly you can imagine a scenario, the more your brain starts to believe it's real. So when you actually step onto that strip, your body is more likely to follow those ingrained mental patterns.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's almost like tricking your mind into thinking you've already been there, done that. Is there any scientific evidence to back this up, though? Does it actually work?
There is. Studies have shown that mental rehearsal can actually activate the same neural pathways in the brain as physical practice. It's not a replacement for actual training, of course, but it can definitely give you a mental edge.
That's incredible. Like having a secret weapon just locked and loaded in your mind. Are there any specific techniques that fencers use to make their visualization practice more effective?
One key is to engage all your senses. Don't just see the action. Feel the weight of the sword in your hand, hear the clash of the blades, even smell the sweat in the air. The more realistic you can make that mental experience, the more powerful the impact will be.
That makes perfect sense. The more immersive, the better. But what about those pesky negative thoughts and doubts that can sometimes creep in? How do fencers deal with those what-if scenarios and that inner critic that can be so hard to silence?
That's where mindfulness comes in. It's about recognizing those negative thoughts,
Oh.
but without judgment, and gently redirecting your focus back to the present moment. Techniques like meditation can be incredibly helpful in developing that mental muscle.
So it's like training your mind to be your own supportive coach instead of that relentless critic. And that's a valuable skill, not just in fencing, but in life in general, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We all have that inner voice, right, that can either lift us up or tear us down. Learning to control that internal dialogue is essential for building confidence and resilience, both on and off the strip.
Speaking of confidence,
Yeah.
I'm curious about the role of self-talk in fencing. We all have those moments of self-doubt, especially when the pressure is on. How can fencers use self-talk to their advantage?
Self-talk is incredibly powerful. It's that constant conversation we have with ourselves, and it can either sabotage our performance or be our biggest cheerleader. Fencers can use positive self-talk to boost their confidence, maintain focus, and manage their emotions during a
So
bout.
it's about replacing those negative thoughts, like I'm going to mess this up or I'm not good enough, with positive affirmations like I'm prepared, I can do this, I'm going to give it my all.
Exactly. It's about shifting your internal dialogue from self-criticism to self-encouragement. And it's not just about the words you use, it's the tone and the feeling behind them. You have to truly believe it for it to really have an impact.
It's like giving yourself a pep talk before and during the match. But what about when you make a mistake or things don't go your way? How can fencers recover mentally from those setbacks?
That's where the ability to reframe comes in. It's about seeing those setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth, rather than as failures. Fencers can ask themselves, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust my strategy? What can I do differently next time?
So it's about turning a negative experience into a positive learning opportunity. And that kind of resilience is essential, not just in fencing, but in any challenging pursuit, right?
Absolutely. Life is full of setbacks and obstacles. The ability to bounce back from those challenges is a key ingredient for success in any field.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me from the sources was this concept of mental fatigue. We often think of fencing as primarily a physical sport, but it seems like the mental demands can be just as exhausting.
That's a crucial point. The constant focus, the pressure to make split-second decisions, the emotional ups and downs of winning and losing, it all takes a toll on your mental energy reserves.
It sounds like training your mind to handle those mental demands is just as important as physical conditioning. How do fencers go about doing that?
They incorporate mental training into their overall regimen. Things like meditation, visualization, and mindfulness practices, they all help build mental stamina and resilience.
It's like hitting the mental gym to strengthen your focus, concentration, and emotional control. Those mental muscles need to be trained just like your physical ones, right?
Precisely. The more you practice those mental skills, the stronger they become. And that strength will translate into better performance on the strip and greater resilience in life overall.
We've talked a lot about these mental techniques, but I'm curious about the role of the coach in developing a fencer's mental game. You know, it's one thing to have the tools, it's another to know how to use them effectively.
That's a great point. A good coach isn't just a technical instructor, they're a mentor, a motivator, and a guide for their athletes' mental and emotional development.
So it's not just about teaching footwork and blade work, it's about fostering a growth mindset, encouraging self-awareness, and helping fencers develop those essential mental skills we've been discussing.
Exactly. A coach who understands the psychology of the sport can create a training environment that nurtures both physical and mental excellence.
I'm thinking about all the different coaching styles we see in fencing. Some coaches are very intense and demanding, while others are more supportive and encouraging. Is there a right approach when it comes to developing a fencer's mental game?
That's a complex question, and the answer really depends on the individual athlete and the coach's personality. The most important factor is a strong foundation of trust and open communication between the coach and the athlete.
So it's about finding the right balance between challenge and support, pushing athletes to their limits, while also providing the encouragement and guidance they need to thrive.
Exactly. A coach who can strike that balance can truly unlock an athlete's full potential, both physically and mentally.
It's amazing how the mental game in fencing mirrors the strategic nature of the sport itself. It's like a chess match within a chess match, where you're not just trying to outmaneuver your opponent on the strip, but also trying to master your own mind.
That's a brilliant analogy. And it underscores the importance of self-awareness and emotional intelligence in fencing. It's about knowing your strengths and weaknesses, recognizing your emotional triggers, and developing strategies to manage your thoughts and feelings under pressure.
It's like becoming your own sports psychologist, constantly analyzing your mental game and making adjustments as needed. I imagine that takes a lot of practice and self-reflection.
It does. But it's a journey that can be incredibly rewarding, not just in fencing, but in all aspects of life.
Well said. I think it's time we shift our focus to a vital, often overlooked aspect of fencing, the emotional roller coaster athletes experience, both on and off the strip.
Intriguing. Let's explore the emotional landscape of this captivating sport and uncover the highs and lows that shape a fencer's journey. We've talked a lot about strategy and mental toughness and focus, but what about the raw emotions that come with fencing? I mean, it's a one-on-one battle, right? You're facing your opponent directly. The adrenaline must be intense.
Oh, absolutely. You can really feel that energy radiating off the strip.
Yeah.
Imagine the rush when you score a touch, the frustration of a missed opportunity, the sting of defeat. Fencing has to be an emotional roller coaster.
It really is. Some of the fencers we read about described it as almost overwhelming emotional intensity, especially at those major tournaments. The fear of failure, the drive to prove themselves, the weight of expectations. It's a lot to carry.
It's interesting how those emotions can manifest physically, too. We've all seen those moments where athletes get tense under pressure. Their movements become stiff, and they start making uncharacteristic errors.
Yeah, it's a perfect illustration of that mind-body connection. When we're stressed or anxious, our muscles tighten up, our breathing gets shallow, our heart races. It's our body's primal fight-or-flight response kicking in.
And in a sport like fencing that demands so much precision and fluidity, that kind of reaction can be disastrous. You need to be loose, agile, responsive. If your body is tense, you simply can't move effectively.
Exactly. That's why emotional regulation is so critical in fencing. It's about learning to recognize those physical signs of stress and developing techniques to calm your mind and body.
So it's not about ignoring or suppressing those emotions, right? It's about acknowledging them, understanding them, and finding ways to channel them in a positive direction.
Precisely. It's about finding that sweet spot between passion and control, letting your emotions fuel your performance without letting them take over.
That makes me think about this concept of grit. You know, that ability to persevere through challenges, to bounce back from setbacks, to keep pushing forward even when things get tough.
Grit is essential in any discipline that demands that high level of performance, and fencing is no exception. It's about that unwavering determination, that inner fire that keeps you going when you're tempted to give up.
And it goes beyond just talent or physical ability. It's about having that mental toughness and resilience to overcome obstacles and achieve your goals.
Absolutely. We saw stories of fencers who, they might not have been the most naturally gifted athletes, but their work ethic and their unwavering self-belief were extraordinary, and often that mental strength propelled them to greater heights than those with, maybe more natural talent but less grit.
It's a powerful reminder that success in any field, not just fencing, is a combination of talent, hard work, and mental resilience. It's about having the right mindset, a willingness to persevere, and the ability to learn and grow from both victories and defeats.
Well said. And speaking of learning, the sources we looked at really highlighted the importance of reflection and self-awareness in fencing. It's not just about going through the motions, it's about understanding the why behind your actions.
So it's about analyzing your performance, identifying your strengths and weaknesses, figuring out what areas need improvement, like having this continuous feedback loop to constantly strive for growth.
Exactly. And that process of self-reflection, it can be immensely valuable, not only for refining your fencing skills, but also for personal development. It's about cultivating awareness of your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, both on and off the strip.
It's like using the fencing experience as a metaphor for life. The challenges and triumphs you face on the strip can teach you valuable lessons for navigating the challenges and triumphs of everyday life.
What a powerful insight. It really underscores how sports can teach us so much more than just physical skills. They foster discipline, resilience, teamwork, and self-awareness, qualities that are essential for success in all aspects of life.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the mental game of fencing. We explored the power of focus, the importance of mental resilience, and how the emotional landscape of the sport can shape the fencer's journey. We hope you gained some valuable insights to take your fencing and your life to the next level.